Last week on the Nicoletti Show. Without further ado, let's welcome Adam to the show. Adam, we did it, brother.
Dude, this is incredible. The Nicoletti Show. Oh my gosh, this is so next level. I love it, man. The deals are still there. I don't even want to say that there's problems with the market because there are every year, but those circumstances are kind of irrelevant to us as investors because we control the purchase price. Last year, we got a house for $1.
What do you look for in new hires?
We want to make sure we're hiring the right personality first for the right position. I need a sales personality for a sales position. As you bring business in, you have to expand your people. We're not just taking anybody and everybody from a client perspective. We're working with phenomenal people.
When you first get into these businesses, you think that the more you grow, the more people you got to throw at the problem. But when you do that, it becomes even a bigger problem. What's hot when it comes to some of the marketing?
It's not magic. It's literally just continually talking to humans about what they have going on and how you can help them with their problems.
There's always going to be somebody that really knows how to find the right people. And if you don't know how to find the right people, find somebody that can find the right people.
Be consistent and commit to the things you say you're going to do. If you're on a journey, like that's your journey, but commit to it. Don't be half in, half out when it gets hard. There's nothing you're going to do as an entrepreneur that's easy. Behind the scenes, a lot of times, it's all hard, man. Commit to it and execute.
Commit and execute. Perfect. Thank you again for your service. And thank you again for coming on the show.
Yes, sir, man. Blessed to be here. Thank you.
Such a fun time with Adam Whitney on that episode. Man, Adam is doing big things in his real estate adventures, and he's just jumping into that full time from the military. What an episode with Adam. If you missed any of that, go back and check that episode out because there's things that these entrepreneurs are doing that are just game-changing, inspiring. And even Adam's doing big things for the teenage kids and a teenage workshop, which I think is coming up. So don't want to miss that. And for all the content on the Nicoletti Show and all the social media channels, scan the QR code. You'll find them all right there. And you know we're on all the major platforms all over. And of course, as I've been saying on the show, if you are enjoying these episodes, feel free to share it on Facebook, YouTube, send it to a friend. This is what it's about. It's about giving back and providing the value back to the community because you never know when somebody's going through a same or similar situation and can really use the advice, really use that one nugget that can just put them over the top and just make it another amazing day for them. So check that out. And tonight, I got the man, Paul Lizell. This guy is amazing. And every time I get to see him at Failing Mastermind, always puts a smile on my face. I'm always like ready and revved up, ready to go because Paul's always working on really cool things in this industry, learning about the stats and the inventory and just getting into some of the amazing things all over the country. So I love this guy. It's always a blast to get dinner with him, and I want to bring him on the show tonight. So I hope you really enjoy this episode. And I just want to say to everybody out there, welcome back. Another Wednesday night in the studio. So happy to be with everybody. We're on the roll. It's summertime. It's crazy. It's summer, and we're here. And I am ready to rock and roll for the show. So let's rock this thing. Hey, everybody. My name is Al Nicoletti. I'm an attorney here in Florida. And welcome to the Al Nicoletti Show, where I bring on real estate super investors, rising rock stars, movers and shakers, and leaders of clubs in their communities that educate, entertain, and inspire all things on Florida real estate, and always going to bring the best of the best to you. Whether they're in Florida or another state, whether they're in the real estate market or they're doing something adjacent to real estate, it's about providing the value to you on how you can take your company to the next level. On my show today, I got the man, the myth, the legend, Paul Lizell. He is doing big things in the market, really getting into the weeds with inventory and understanding statistics and really understanding how to do deals virtually. He's been doing this for years. He was one of the first that really understood how to start this virtually, was crushing it virtually back in the early 2000s. And to have somebody on the show that can talk about where the market's at versus where it was then and where we could be headed. It's amazing to see this kind of thing, and it would really help a lot of investors out there. So without further ado, let's welcome Paul to the show. Paul, let's do it, man. Welcome.
Thank you, Al, so much, man. I've been long waiting to come on the show with you and hang out with you. You know, we talked about it a lot at our mastermind that we're in there together. So super excited to be here. I can't wait to dive into stuff here with you.
I know. I was thinking about that a couple of weeks ago. I was like, Paul and I keep seeing each other. We're like, we got to do this. Let's make this happen. No better time to do this. So excited you're on, Paul. Paul, you got to give a little background for people. Like, how did it kind of begin for you, and where are you at today?
So it started back for me a long time ago. I think I bought my very first investment property at the very end of December of 2001. So we're about 23 and a half years ago. I first started investing, and I was working for a small community bank back then. I was a commercial loan underwriter for a year before I became a business development officer. So I bought this property, partnered with a guy. We paid $29,500 for it. It was a HUD property off the HUDhomestore.gov. And we put about $4,000 into it. We flipped it for $69,000. A few months later, we made $30,000 net and split that. And I decided, you know what, this is pretty good side money. I think I can end up doing this full time if I push it more and more. So I started buying more and more while I was working. And my whole objective was to eventually quit working for the bank and work for myself, right? That's, I think, most entrepreneurs' objective out there anyway, right? You don't want to be stuck in a cubicle. Nobody wants to be stuck in a cubicle doing that all the time, 40 hours, 60 hours a week, like I was doing, or being on the road a lot, right? So I ended up saving up. I needed 18 months. This is what I personally set for myself, 18 months worth of bill paying ability in my savings account. So I knew that when I quit, I can do this, give it 6 to 12 months, assess it. If I needed to get another job, it was going to be no problem to get another job, right? But I wanted to be able to have that, and did that. So I quit in 2004, went full time at the very end of the year, right around the holiday time, Thanksgiving, I believe. And, never turned back since. And that market was crazy from 2004 to 2008, and the financial crisis hit. And holy cow, did that, ravage a lot of investors. And all it did for me was change my model. I was doing a ton of fix and flips at that point. And I switched my model to wholesaling because I'd done a couple wholesale deals. I wanted to maximize every deal at the time. So fixing and flipping was a way to maximize your profits on it. Wholesaling was great. All right, I have a property here. I can't get to this for a while. Let me just make 10 or 15 grand on it real quick. Did that. Then I started to realize when I was losing 30, 40, 50, 60 grand on some of these flips when the financial crisis hit, because we had a 20, 30% correction in a short period of time, that wholesaling is probably the way to go. So I started doing that. I was doing bank REOs, and I was buying a ton off the HUD Home Store. Let me tell you, some of the crazy pricing I got in 2009 and early 2010 off the HUD Home Store. There were prices listed on the MLS for $235,000. I was getting for $90,000. Wow. Going around selling them for $155,000. Doing back-to-back closings on them. We had several of them. We had one on a Matic Monday where we made 55, 50, and 45 on 3 separate deals in one day. That was an insane day, right?
Insane.
But that was the journey.
Look at those price points back then. That's not what it is today.
Oh, not at all. I wish I could have held on a lot of those. If it was a different situation where I could have had some cash and could have held on, but all the liquidity was dried up and there were no lenders out there lending. It was hard to get money from private lenders out there even at that point.
So do you have more of that portfolio of like long-term holds, short-term rentals? Like you have some of that passive income rolling through. Probably not at huge volume, but you were able to keep some of those properties.
Some of those properties I did. And here's what I learned and what I did and mistakes I made along the way, so your audience can learn from my mistakes. So I bought, accumulated as the market went up. I sold some of those rentals, bought more, accumulated, sold more of those rentals. And then at 2021, I sold out all of them, except for a 12 unit I was doing out in Casper, Wyoming. And then adding a 5 unit and a couple in Texas and Florida that I kept those rentals. I end up selling most of them off. I still have some, but here's what I'm doing. I'm shifting now. I'm doing a lot of my rentals in Florida, going to keep some in Wyoming, going to keep some in Texas where the real estate taxes are lower, Tennessee, and certain states where I want to be in, where I feel like long-term, they're going to be more landlord friendly and I'll have better appreciation. And now I'm going to continue to build. My objective right now is to build a bunch of rentals. If they can cash flow now with interest rates the way they are, if they come down at any point, I can just refinance them and make them cash flow even more. But yeah, so I'm growing that, and as well as just doing a lot of flipping and getting into land and doing all kinds of things right now.
Yeah, and that's great to see that you're picking those certain markets, right? You're diversifying your portfolio. You know, and all landlord friendly states. And Tennessee's another market that a lot of people love, and that market's been blowing up in the Nashville area. Outside of that, what's another Chattanooga area? David Old's that's David's area over there.
Yes, it is.
But let's talk about this, Paul, which is, you know, the price points to get into those kinds of markets. Like, where are you seeing the price points to be able to get that kind of inventory? Whether you're doing a wholesale deal, whether you're doing the end buy to build that portfolio, what are some of these numbers that people need to be mindful of with this type of market?
Obviously, in Florida, you're going to be paying a different price point for your properties than you are in Indiana and Ohio, right? They're very linear markets that much lower cost and a little lower cash flow too, but your cost of entry is so much lower. For example, we just got one under contract in Bedford in Indiana today for 89,000. In Florida, it's hard to find something for 89,000. That's not a train wreck, right? This one is literally, I could put a tenant in day one and rent this one out. We're not going to do that. We're going to flip this one. But you have markets like that, like Ohio, that are very good cash flow friendly. Same with Michigan. We're doing quite a bit in Michigan over the past 2 years, and you can pick up rentals there all day long in different markets. Texas is a little more difficult just because you want to be in the tertiary markets, these smaller markets, more rural, where the real estate taxes are lower. If you're in Dallas, you got some pretty high real estate taxes, or Houston. You're just going to pay a bit more in these markets. Waco, Texas is a little bit cheaper. So you look at those kind of secondary markets. Tyler, Texas, which is probably a third tier market there. I'll target those. And the Carolinas. I love the Carolinas for cash flow. But price points. So for instance, we got a couple in Missouri between 40 and 80,000. We're getting them anywhere from 60 to 80,000 in Ohio and Indiana. Then in Florida, we're going to be anywhere from 125 to 450, depending on what you're targeting, right? What size property you're targeting. We try not to go to that price point. Our objective is to be within that FHA guidelines, because we have more buyers with FHA, right? So with that, if we stay under that threshold, we know it's going to be much easier to sell than something that has to go conventionally, especially in a tighter market.
Right. Yeah. You're being mindful with that type of consumer for sure. And I was thinking, like, you're right about the tertiary markets. That is something that I've talked about a lot at presentations for what I do, is that people should focus on, don't go to the metros, because the metros are saturated. Same thing with the price points in the metros. They're going to have those price points. They're going to be way higher. And I'm thinking in Texas, I'm thinking like Lubbock or San Antonio. I mean, even San Antonio. Was another nice market over there. I know Austin's was just like way too expensive.
It is.
But you're right. Find those areas. And you say the north of the Carolinas. So true. If there was one market that I would go invest in if it wasn't Florida, I feel like that'd be North Carolina, because that area just seems ripe for so much investing, and those price points are in a reasonable area now versus what they could be later when people get into that market. Have you seen any types of slowdowns in any markets, Paul? Like, have you seen any stagnation or any declines?
Yeah, so we're seeing it right now in Austin, Texas. They've got the most inventory in the country, and they're declining somewhere in the 8 to 10% range in their pricing right now. So that the first hit, San Francisco is hitting its second wave. It had one in early 2022, if you guys remember. And now it's having a second wave of increased inventory. And then here in Southwest Florida, we're having similar things. And this is all ramifications of Hurricane Ian. When Hurricane Ian hit, about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, they redrew the flood maps, and they redrew the flood maps in Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Port Charlotte, and these areas. And for people who don't know those areas, those are retiree areas for blue collar working class people. These are not high end areas. These are areas where you're paying $200,000-$300,000, maybe $400,000 for a property. And when you increase their flood insurance from $500 or $1,000 a year to $12,000 to $15,000 a year, they can't afford it. So they're forced to sell those people that are in those flood zones. So that's happened in those markets. And that's why you've got high inventory, especially in those markets. I think Jacksonville's got a little increase of inventory as well. Tampa, I think we just got so oversaturated there at some point. And there's so much money investing down here now. I think it just actually had to slow down a bit, right? Even Miami seeing that slow down as well.
Yeah, and I know we talked about that Cape Coral area, because I remember seeing your post in Family about this, and it was a really interesting post about the inventory in Cape Coral because of the insurance being through the roof. So let's dive in on that, because that also could scream to a lot of people opportunity in that market, right? How do you capitalize on that kind of opportunity with rising interest rates? And then in the same question, how do you also protect yourself so you're not going to find yourself in a stuck situation with the rising interest rates?
Yes, that is. I just had this conversation with my team yesterday, because Cape Coral is a target zone for me, because I'm very bullish on it long term. I do like it long term. Some people on the East Coast that see it as the next Miami, not the size of Miami, not what Miami is, but the next big growth spot, meaning like Miami was the big growth spot we had in this last cycle here. But I'm very careful about the term catching a falling knife. I don't want to catch a falling knife. So I'm watching prices fall. I'm watching all the price reductions here. I'm seeing the sales drop. And I'm going to try to gauge where the bottom is. And it's like, you're never going to be perfect with that, right? But if I could pick something up that I know I can easily cash flow, I'm fine with it, including the insurance cost, all these different, and the mortgage cost, obviously. And then if rates come down, it's just a bonus, and I can refinance and even increase that more. But that's a real big question right now, as to how much further can that market go down. There's so much inventory right now. I still feel like there's further. I think it's going to play out until next spring, and we'll really see where that market is for sure.
Yeah, and you also wonder what insurance companies are still going to stick around at that point too, because if it ends up being another storm season and something happens there, what happens to those insurance rates? Is there even going to be anybody to insure? And then if you pick up a rental over there, now you're in that position. Now you have to find a tenant, and that means that tenant's rent has to at least cover some kind of part of that premium, because so now is there going to be a rent control issue over in that area? Are there going to start being rent control issues where you have insurance going through the roof? Because how are you going to deal with that?
Yeah, they wouldn't be, DeSantis, luckily for us, is a really free market governor. So if anything, he's trying to incentivize more insurance companies to come in. He's got some programs out there that is drawing more in, which is great. And hopefully that lasts. But I don't see rent controls here. And that's one of the reasons I target Florida, Tennessee, Texas, and these different states, and Wyoming especially, because they're just not likely to be rent control markets like California, like New York, like maybe parts of North Jersey can be. So I don't see that, but that is a risk, right? You always you never know how bad a financial crisis gets and what politicians do to save their jobs. So you always got to be cognizant of that. And again, it's a gamble, right? To an extent, it's a gamble. But if I look at it long term, if I'm holding these things 5, 10, really, I'm looking at a 10-year plus time frame with Cape Coral. I'd like to hold it for longer than that. I'm very bullish on Fort Myers still right now, because Fort Myers doesn't have that inventory issue that they have over in Cape Coral. So I am picking up properties right now in Fort Myers, and still Port Charlotte and Northport in the right areas. Again, as long as they cash flow, and I'll still flip in those markets too. But you're right, there is risk. There's definitely risk. And if we have a bigger storm season this year, guaranteed you're going to have more carriers coming out, insurance carriers leaving or trying to leave. And they're calling for a big season. So we'll see what happens here. Knock wood. Hopefully we don't have that. Both you and I are here in Florida. We don't want that out.
You just knocked on wood. I just knocked on wood there. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a factor to look at, right? And we'll come back to this point about the flood insurance and the taxes, because and for those that are listening right now, Paul is going to go through some really interesting statistics towards the end that you don't want to miss that really show where our market's at with the foreclosures. And there was this interesting stat about why there would be foreclosures. And one of the highest percentages were because of property taxes and insurance. And I was like, whoa. So we'll dive in on that a little bit later, Paul. Another thing that you mentioned too with me that I've heard a bunch of investors talk about, but I didn't know if there was something that you've seen, which is avoiding HOAs in Florida. If you're doing any type of investing, because a lot of investors will find deals where it's 55 and over, or an HOA, or there's some kind of restricted covenant on that property. But it's like, do you get into it? Do you not? What's your take on that?
So I'm a big anti-HOA, and I haven't been in the past until the past couple of years. If you go back to the last financial crisis, HOAs in Florida lost 70% of their value. 70%. That was the average during a financial crisis. That is staggering, right? That's a crypto drop. That's a cryptocurrency dump. And I took advantage of that. And I bought a lot and I resold them as the market was recovering in 2012, 13, 14, 15. And then it heated up so much down here that I couldn't compete anymore. And I have two right now, two different properties, one in Naples that's an HOA and one in Osprey that's Sarasota County in an HOA. And that was a student deal we did. And I regret that. My gut told me not to do it. Let me tell you, I'm going to lose probably close to $200,000 when I sell that property. And it's because of HOA. They just give you an idea of this one, for example, it was a luxury HOA. You had to buy in at least a social membership, which at the time was $40K, or a golf membership, which was $75 at the time. Great, beautiful place, awesome club, rackets, golf, 3 golf courses, one of them PGA Tour they played on. And then they increased it to $70K when all the pandemonium came down here in 22, right? Everybody was buying, and they increased the golf to $100K. And what happened is the price of the housing crashed because the demand dropped down. When you try to jack up prices like that, and these HOAs, they're always way behind the curve. They're just like the government. They are like the government. HOAs are little communist organizations, just like our government is. They're going to make decisions late to the game that are going to affect and hurt their product. And unfortunately, we're dealing with that now. We do have it rented, but we lose a lot each month. And because we have to have that membership there, that one hurts. The other one, we don't have to have a membership at, but I've just seen the prices declined about 20% on both those HOAs, 20%. We have not had a decline in this market, right? And Florida's still been up, but the HOAs are already down. So unless it's a very small HOA fee, and there are plenty out there that do have very minimal fees, I would advise do not ever invest in an HOA, because they'll restrict you on short-term rentals. They'll even restrict you potentially on your longer-term rentals, some of them. So be careful and be cognizant of that. I only buy out of HOAs right now in Florida, unless there was a great flip opportunity. But it would hurt to do right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people could get great benefit from that, because I'm thinking it's not about the real estate itself. It's all the restrictions that they have embedded in the condo declaration, right? That you'd have to like get a lawyer to basically look through and make sure, can we rent this out? Can we do a short-term rental? Can we do this or that? And like you said, like most of these have these restrictions. And again, it sounds like it's not the real estate, but it's all these other services and fees, and like the golf thing like you're talking about. It just gets in the way. So really,
assessments, let's not forget those. So with the hurricane and everything, they had additional repairs that they didn't expect to come in. So now you have assessments that you're hit on too. So not just a declining market, but now you're paying extra on assessments on top of it. Didn't mean to cut you off there, Al, but I wanted to make sure people understand there's a lot more factors that go into it there.
I'm thinking condos, right? Condos with assessments. I mean, there's investors that won't ever touch a condo. They talk about it like, don't buy a condo because of all these other things that will pop up, and they do the assessments either every year, every 5 years, and then jacks up all the fees. Really interesting. What about REO auctions? Like, what are you seeing in that market right now? What are we looking for? What are you seeing? What do you get into?
So we're always looking at the inventory. How much are these auction houses, whether it's auction.com, Hubzu, Zoom, Hudson and Marshall, Realty Bid, or Auction Network, even HUD Home Store. How much more inventory are they adding? They are adding inventory, which is great. More. I mean, it's not great for the people that are getting foreclosed on, obviously, right? But it's great for investors who are looking to buy these houses. So that is increasing, and we're buying more this year than we were last year, which means they're releasing more. And whenever they do this, we get a little bit better pricing on things, I'm noticing they're kind of ahead of the game with economy. They have good economists that work for them. They're anticipating a softening in the market for unemployment and things. So they are just getting rid of stuff and probably trying to make their books look a little bit better. And a lot of these banks have commercial mortgages, right, with these big commercial properties that aren't renting out all of their stores like they used to, or their office space. So they're getting hits, and they need to bring in income some way, somehow. So we are getting additional inventory, which is great. We're finding more deals, which is good. It's good for us, good for our students.
You just brought up a great point with commercial properties. Some of these commercial properties that are going through foreclosures are taking massive cuts.
Yeah.
I remember Tim Horvath on the show talked about the Wells Fargo building, and then it went up for auction, and it was significantly lower than the price of what somebody bought it for years ago. Then there was another building in Texas that went through foreclosure, and somebody bought it at the auction, and it was way less. So, are you seeing this more and more on the commercial side? Is that another area you're kind of getting into?
It's a commercial thing for sure. And I'm looking at stuff. Again, I'm trying not to catch a falling knife yet, because I know as more bank failures come, this will worsen. This will get deeper. We're not at the Lehman Brothers moment yet from 2008 in the commercial side of real estate. And the commercial side from the residential, two separate things. We're not going to have some kind of a residential crisis in real estate like we have in commercial right now. This was all COVID pandemic related, where people were able to work wherever and they don't have to go in the office all the time. And that directly affected a lot of different people just overnight, right? And that's a lot of, and all these 5-year resets are coming into play over last year, this year, and next year, which are hitting a lot of these banks. And most of these banks, these smaller regional banks, one of them I do bank with, Key Bank, they're all getting affected. And they're going to see some that they're going to have to sell off some of these things at record low prices, and they're not going to be happy about it. But some investors are going to get some good deals as well.
Yeah, crazy. You got to be careful with the small banks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Paul, one thing that you've been able to master over your 20 plus years of doing investing has being able to do all these deals just virtually, right? Not being able to have to you yourself be boots on the ground at these properties, and just being able to find the right people. How have you been able to implement that in the 44 of the 50 states, or if not more, just doing deals virtually?
It's gotten easier and easier with technology as years are going on. It wasn't as easy in 2009 and 10 because we didn't have all these apps available. We didn't have Redfin really available. Zillow was still in its early stages in a bit. It wasn't as good, and the Zestimate was really awful at that point. They've improved that algorithm to an extent, but it's still not something anybody should rely on. But now it's just so much simpler. And I've been able to utilize a lot of different realtors for boots in the ground. Give a little trade secret out here. Our best realtors that we've found are people that work small mom and pop brokerages, not your Keller Williams, not your Coldwell Banker, not Remax, right? Small mom and pop brokerage, been there for 20, 30 years. They know the market like the back of their hand, and they have contractors out the wazoo that constantly do work for them. So they've been a greatest source for us for buying these properties. If they need renovations, getting contractors out there that are affordable, quick, and reliable to get them right back on the market for us. So we've been fortunate with that. It's just gotten a lot easier and easier with all the technology. And look, it's going to be commonplace for people over the next decade. It's just going to be very simple to do.
Yeah, there's people doing land deals from California and Florida. There's people doing deals from Florida in New York and Massachusetts. It's crazy what we're seeing. And you're right. It's all the technology, all the software platforms that these companies have created that can pull the data and put it on a map and be able to sort through what kind of lead it is and maybe give owner info or owner contact and just skip trace and just so many things that are available to people nowadays. It's really cool to see. So it's cool that you were doing it then, but you just have to be in awe of the technology now. It's like if you had the technology now, then
How many more deals could I have done? Yeah, it would have been so much simpler, easier, the profitability, and yeah, no doubt about it. It's so much simpler now than it was back in the day. I had so many things that were just stuff I stored in just my Excel file or a binder that I had information on and stuff. Now it's just everything can be done in a CRM, just much more simple.
Yeah. I'm even thinking in my business, just pre-COVID, how many more tasks and things we had to do more in person by hand. And then after COVID, it's like everything's all electronic. Send everything in, upload. I mean, it's the most amazing thing when you can work from home, and it's no wonder why the commercial side of the business is all over the place and a disaster. So that's cool, Paul, and it's really inspiring for people that always wonder how can you do it, because Nick Perry talks about going all over the country. RJ Bates talks about going investing all over the country in 50 states. So like, you're here to say I've been doing it for 20 plus years. So that's important for people to know. Really, really good. Paul, the biggest thing that really struck me was when you were like, "Hey, Al, I gotta show you these statistics on where the foreclosure market's at," and you sent it over to me, and I looked at it about 2 hours before the episode, and I sat down, literally quiet time, and I looked at this, and I was like, "What the world is going on?" And I love stats, but it's crazy visually seeing it. And when you can see how things were back in '08 and '09 compared to now, and seeing how back then it was historically high and then now you're at historical lows. And what are your thoughts on that? I mean, it's like it's low.
It's super low. I mean, inventories at its low point, foreclosures are near their low point. Obviously, the low point was during the pandemic when they shut down foreclosures and evictions, all those kind of things. But yeah, it's unbelievable. And the question is, how quickly can it rebound? Will it ever get back to the norms of 2018, 19 before, the pre-COVID times? So that is a great question. There's a lot of great empirical data out there. Darren Bloomquist was the one I shared you from. He's from auction.com, vice president of economics there. He does a phenomenal job tracking. He and I talk probably every month, or worst case, every 2 months. I've had him on my podcast a couple of times, and recently this past week, and we deep dive into this data. So it's interesting if you're a data geek. Look, I was a finance major and economics minor in college. I loved econ, so it really catches my interest, but for most people, it'll put them to sleep.
Well, no, I think it should, get some people thinking about where the market's at, right? Like even looking at the stats, like a couple years even before COVID hit, it was just still like you would say even then historically low.
Oh, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's still low. But it's really interesting to see. And then even when you look at the metro markets, right? Like what's popping in some of these metro markets. I mean, Florida's orange.
Yes. Yeah.
Whoa. I mean, volume wise, that was the thing that just really stuck out. I mean, of course, you got the California markets in Texas, right? But the Florida market is pretty all over. I mean, with orange and deep orange.
It sure is.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Do you want me to share some of this data? Do you want to do a screen share? Should we do a screen share on it, or do you not want to do that?
Oh, no, we could do that. I just have to send it to Mike so he can.
Oh, we don't need to do that. Yeah, we don't need to do that. Then we'll just go over some of that information. I'm going to pull up some of this. If you let's go to that page you're talking about, where there's just an incredible amount of inventory here in Florida. I mean, it's up, I believe, near 60% year over year in inventory. And we talked a bit about that, how Southwest Florida is the worst and the biggest culprit for that going on there. But if we go to, let's see, some of the other data, some of the other things, I had made some notes on it. The foreclosure starts are definitely starting to go up, but slowly. And let's dive into that a little bit, why they're going to be slow, because I mean, I think it's common sense, but I want to make sure everybody totally understands that. We have had a record low interest rates over a decade period of time, right? If you go back to early 22, the rates were still 2.753% in January. So for people to sell their house to have 2, 3, or 4% mortgage rates, to now go pay the same price or really 5 or 10% more for a house at 7% mortgage rate, your payment's going to more than double. Who can afford to do that? So people are staying with these cheap interest rates and able to continue to pay them. That's keeping foreclosures down. Now, what will trigger foreclosures up? It'll take a couple of years. I'm seeing it somewhat now starting to increase a little bit, but it'll be down the road. These people that are into the 7, 8% mortgages that we've had over the past year and a half are going to be ones, if the rates drop, they'll just walk away. They'll just walk away from them potentially. Let them go into foreclosure. That'll increase it. But we didn't have anything like that. 2008 financial crisis was allowed by ninja loans, where you didn't have to have a job, show any income, show anything, and you were just getting a house, getting a mortgage. So we knew something bad was going to happen. That created a financial crisis. We don't have anything like that. We have great underwriting right now. So the foreclosures are not going to rip up, and I don't anticipate them ripping up anytime soon. So that's really important, because there's a lot of people out there. There's a guy on YouTube, Reventure Consultant. I don't know whether you've seen his stuff. Everything he's been saying for 3 or 4 years, the housing crisis, everything's going to crash 30, 40, 50%. And he's been wrong for 3, 4, or 5 years, but he still gets tons of views. It's fear porn, as they call it. I just don't see that in the data. I don't see where inventory is going to come from unless you have mass layoffs. Get mass layoffs, job losses, then you'll have issues. Then you're going to start to see more inventory.
Yeah. And I remember back when the foreclosure crisis was hitting, there were so many 90 day plus delinquencies, right? So why do you think that the 30-day delinquencies have been just super high, but then come the 90-day, it almost
drops down? So there's government programs that are out to help people that are falling behind. And Florida, to DeSantis' credit, he's put them out there. We've used up 94% of our fund from the federal government on that. Whereas other states, I think Georgia's only used 64% of it. I'm trying to remember what page that was on. But yeah, very interesting. Here it is, 47%. We've used 97%. Texas has used 94%. The Carolinas have used 95 and 99%. So these programs, FHA has them out there. Some conventional mortgages use them. They incentivize people to stay in their home. Now, when polled, the lenders on these mortgages only expect 51% of these to perform, which is pretty low, right? I mean, you would think you would expect more if they're helping them, subsidizing and trying to catch them back up. But I guess it just goes to show a lot of people fall into issues again. And we have so many factors like inflation, raising the cost of everything between fuel, food, insurance. As we know, it's not just Florida and California and Texas that got hit with all these increases in property insurance. Other states have too. I buy all over, and I'm paying double in a lot of other states, where I'm paying maybe triple in parts of Florida. So we got a lot of different factors. Yeah, a lot of different factors coming into play there.
Yeah. I think Mike was able to pull it up. Let's see if we can get the stats up here real quick. Boom. Look at that. All right. So that was the historical foreclosure stats right there. That was the first page. Yep. Keep going down, Mike. Yeah, that was the heat-seeking map of where the top areas and the coolest areas are. Yep. Keep going. Let's see. Anything here on this chart that was?
So this is completed foreclosure auctions, and they are going up. As you see, both those lines are going back up. You had completed foreclosure auctions going up and REO auction volume going up. So it just means more foreclosures are happening. It's just not drastic because it's nowhere near where it is on the left side, right? But it is going in a direction you would think it would normally do, especially coming out of the program where the government stopped foreclosures.
I gotcha. On the next slide, this just had me just tilting my head a little bit. On that previous slide with all the dots and everything, it really showed Florida as pretty hot, but then it shows the volume auction, foreclosure auction volume is 26%. Why low in this chart, but more high in the other one?
I think it's the timing. So when I moved here in 2021, it was in the first half of the year in 2021, I got 3% mortgage rate. So many people were moving in here 2020, 2021, and early 2022. That's when Florida had its peaks. It stopped about April, May when the rates went up. So there's so many people in Florida that have these really low mortgage rates that they're helped greatly by this, which is why you see the foreclosures are not high. Where Louisiana, people are not going to Louisiana. And you see that 111% in Louisiana, right? You're going up there. And I think the large part in Louisiana is because the hurricane things and insurance went up drastically there, very drastically, because I'm buying properties in Louisiana right now. And even out of the flood zone, the insurance is very high. So they're getting hit with that. Texas had the same thing as Florida, if you look at it, right? They also did not get hit as hard because a lot of people were moving there during those same time periods. To go to Arizona, those people were not as affected either. North Carolina had a big influx too. The one that's perplexing, a little more perplexing to me, is South Carolina. Why is that one so much higher than North Carolina? I think it's industry related because there is so much more industry in North Carolina than there is in South Carolina. That I think that's a big factor for it.
And also, Paul, why do you think the Midwest or North Midwest is so high, along with Indiana and Kentucky?
A lot of people moved out of there. Those were big places where people were exiting and coming down to Florida. I know most of the people I know in my community that came to Southwest Florida here were either from Minnesota, Michigan, some from the Dakotas, Kansas, Iowa. So you had it from a lot of those areas. So maybe those people still have, I don't know, they still have higher mortgage rates or what's going on here. There's got to be other factors going into play, because you would think those markets would not be affected nearly as much, unless it's just the inflation that's hitting them. And it could simply be, and I didn't look at the demographics as to how much, what the people's income are. If you look at the North and South Carolina, you probably don't have a lot of high income earners, right? So when you don't have that, that means they're more like the people in Cape Coral, your working class people who are affected much bigger by inflation and these rising costs. So now their foreclosure rate's going up more.
Understood. Yeah, for sure. All right, let's keep rolling down. Let's keep going down the chart. That was the 30-day and 90-day delinquency, that was a crazy chart as well. Anything on this one that we're looking at? This is
one that goes into it, right? Where there's people, they're expecting only 51% of the people, being the mortgage companies that have these loans out, to perform, that will permanently perform. What percentage of organizations, loans, and loss mitigation currently meaning 30 to 90 days delinquent, that they expect to perform permanently? And they only expect 51%, which is staggeringly low.
Crazy stat.
Yeah.
Keep going. Go to the distress one, the next one. This was interesting. This is a
good one.
Yeah. So explain this one on the right side.
So this is the pre-foreclosures. And I used to do pre-foreclosures back in the day. If you go back to the early 2000s, and it was really pretty flat and low, even going into the financial crisis. And what happened is, get the 20, remember we were talking about inventory levels dropping 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, all these different years.
Yeah.
So there's not enough inventory. So people are turning, instead going to the sheriff's sale or the courthouse steps to buy properties. And you saw a dramatic increase. Look at 2019, only 37% of properties going to auction, meaning foreclosure process, were bought. And it went up to 65%. So you're talking almost double the amount in 2020 and 2021, and now a slight reduction in 2023 here, but that similar trend. That's one that Darren was asking me, what is the reason for that? And that's simply that people are looking for deals, and now they started to look at these auction properties, not bank REOs yet, right? But one's going to the courthouse steps.
Got it. Yeah. And this is the distressed market too.
Correct. All distressed sales. These are ones going to foreclosure and that become a foreclosure.
Got it. Interesting stats. This is, I don't know, this stuff broken down like this just really visualizes like what is going on right now. This is another one. Oh yeah. This was like, when I saw this slide, Paul, I was like, oh, well, this makes sense. Of course. Yes. homeowner equity is obviously increased, right?
Yes.
And so, and it doesn't look like it's stopping either.
It's not. And think about this for the foreclosure side again, why there won't be this tsunami of foreclosures like a lot of gurus out there are trying to say. When you have equity like this, people don't necessarily have to go in foreclosure. They can just sell their house and pay their bills and still have money, right? So that's another reason. You look at all these different factors that are reasons why foreclosures aren't going to have some kind of crazy dramatic increase.
Interesting to see that. Go to the next one after this one. Keep going. This one. So this was alarming to me, right? So some of the top reasons why there would be delinquencies for the foreclosures. And you would think because of what we went through in 08 that probably number one would have been either consumers defaulting for payments or employment. But number one ends up being rising insurance and property taxes.
And it makes a ton of sense. Look, when I bought my property here in 2021, my property taxes were 7,100. They reassessed me a little over a year later at 16,000, more than doubled my property taxes. Now I can afford that and absorb it and still be okay, but a lot of people can't. And my homeowner's insurance doubled as well. Luckily, I didn't need flood insurance, but that's a big factor. If you're working paycheck to paycheck, it's going to wipe you out. God forbid you need a new hot water heater or a new air conditioner or heater, depending on where you live. All these other factors that come in, or you have a health issue, you're going to be wiped out. So that's huge. And this is governments, like, they get greedy. They see the market going up and they want a piece of the action too. I'm like, guys, I remember talking to the county appraiser here. I'm like, you guys are creating another issue here. You are jacking people's taxes up far too quickly, too much. And then you're going to end up either have to reverse this or you're just going to wipe a lot of people out.
And it seems like it's going in that direction because both the rising consumer debt delinquencies and the property tax portion, I mean, people are not going to be able to afford the properties because of those two issues alone. Forget the rising unemployment. That looks like almost a non-factor with the delinquencies, but it's half. But I thought that was really interesting given what you explained on Cape Coral and that Southwest Florida area.
And look at that, only 6% of falling home price are worried about falling home prices. Only 6%. And that's because they have a lot of equity, right?
Right. Nobody's worried about that. Right. The equity's there. It's all the other payments that are becoming a problem for everybody else.
So true. So true. This is like, these are leading indicators that we're seeing. Where are we heading? We are going into recession at some point, right? They're trying to kick the can further down the road, but
yes,
we're heading that direction.
Yes. The next one, I have a really interesting question for you, but I'll let you kind of take it from here on these stats. Obviously, the biggest one is the 1 to 4% increase on the volume trends. Anything that you're noticing?
Is this the volume in foreclosures?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you have the increase, and we're seeing, so you have the increase, and that's not a huge increase, but it's enough of an increase that we should be aware of. These things are going up. These foreclosures are going to be increasing a little bit, right? It should just be enough to worry people a little bit, how the economy is. Not necessarily the housing and stuff, because they're going to be able to sell their house if they need to. Oh, back to that other one, though, 30-day and why people aren't 90-day delinquent. Sometimes maybe people are 30 days, put the house in the market, and it sells before that 90-day delinquency too. That's another factor that just popped into my head. That is the reason we could see that here too. But yeah, look, foreclosures are going to go up just because not drastically. They're going to go up just because of the government program. When they stopped foreclosures and then you open it back up, all these ones that were backlogged are going to eventually get to foreclosure as soon as they get to that 90+ day late, if the bank wants to. Now, there's government incentives out there to hold those that are getting 90 days late, to keep those people in them, especially on the FHA side, the VA side, and the USDA side. The government subsidized mortgages, they're going to incentivize people to stay in there. So that'll help keep the foreclosures down. But, we're seeing the increase. We're seeing the increase because of the economy.
Yeah. And the one stat that really stuck out to me was the reverse mortgages.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
I know, right? Because what are we in? We're in Florida. I mean, this is retirement world, and so many people didn't save up back then and
Mhm.
tapped into the equity, and now you have
And you
that.
hate to see that.
It's a sticky problem. So, any thoughts on the reverse mortgages popping up more and more?
That's another big stat on where we're heading to as in a recession. When people have to pull reverse mortgages, that means they're running out of money. They're out of their IRAs, they're out of the 401ks, whatever pension they had. So now they have to borrow from their home. That's their last bastion of defense, right? That's the last thing they
Mm.
have. And that's really sad that they're stuck with that because, Social Security barely pays your gas bill and your utilities each month right now, let alone food. Every time I go, I got a big family. We're a family. We have 4 kids. So whenever I go to the grocery store, it's never under 250 or $300.
Yeah, that's a big food bill.
Yeah. Go to Costco, it's 400 plus.
Yeah, you got to watch that. Get the coupons.
Yeah.
But like I mean, 6% is a small number that I'm noticing for the reverse mortgages. But as we keep going into these years of the aging population, I could just see that increasing to like 9, 12, like just that number getting higher. And not necessarily because of like a crisis, but just because of the volume of people that have that type of loan, that have that type of indicator that would just increase, and another distressed opportunity that investors would go after. Although you got to be careful because those interest rates on those reverse mortgages are out of control.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Out of control.
Yeah.
Paul, anything on this next slide with all the winding lines?
Oh, this is the winning bid to after repair value. So if you see, I think it's the green line is the winning bid, and the after repair value is the blue line, right? The home price appreciation.
Mhm.
So and it just shows, and he went through this to show that investors anticipate pretty well what's going on in the market. If you start from the far left, there's a little blip up, and then they brought it down, and then it kind of you saw the appreciation going up a little bit. And then we anticipated a drop in 2020 with COVID, right? And it did. We dropped, investors did, and the market dropped. And then the market soared, and investors were a little late to the game jumping back in there, but they go up and down with it. If you notice this crocodile teeth pattern. And
It
then
does.
there was a crash in 2020. All that's interest rate driven, right? This was early 2022 when the Russia-Ukraine war came out, and the rates skyrocketed. Investor demand plummeted. I got a lot more inventory because of it, because I was still buying during that time, and end up the drop didn't really happen too much. But you see, investors fall in line with it pretty well. So, and they're anticipating it going up, but now there's going to be this. We got this inflection point. How much further does it go up? Housing affordability is already unaffordability is at an all-time high. Rental affordability is at an all-time high. Auto loans right now are at an all-time high in defaults. Credit cards are at an all-time high in defaults. All these indicators, everything I'm seeing is screaming at me. We're heading towards a recession. God forbid the war in the Middle East skyrockets. Then we're talking about $130 per barrel gasoline or for oil, and gasoline prices are going to skyrocket to $5, $6 per gallon. And then the economy completely shuts down. Then unemployment goes up drastically, and we're in a bad place.
A lot of factors, right? It could even be more than $130 per barrel. Who knows?
Yeah. Now they will do things to spur the market. Like they're getting ready. They will start easing now. Their interest rates are probably going to be dropped. The Wall Street's betting that they're going to be dropped. And I'm betting it's going to be sooner rather than later because of all the weakness with these smaller to mid-sized banks right now. So what that will do is we'll push liquidity back in the market. And when liquidity comes back into the market, it's back to the casinos. They're going to be putting money back in the stock market, crypto market, gold, silver, real estate. Risk on assets will be back on, and that'll help spur things. Interest rates will drop too. Mortgage rates, that is. Mortgage rates drop to 5.5%. You're going to see inventory drop and prices go up again. But income isn't going up enough to make that, it's not going to be a drastic increase just because income doesn't go up enough. Look, the debt to income ratio is still the biggest factor that you have to come up with when buying a house.
And Paul, when you say go back to 5.5, I'm thinking, boy, what another wave for refinances.
Yes, absolutely. It's going to be huge demand for refinances. Will be great for investors that have bought properties that are cash flowing now. They're going to cash flow way more then.
Crazy.
So it will be opportunity. Look, and it's coming because they see what's coming ahead, and it's like one last hope here to help push the economy back up, and especially coming into an election, right? They want to do whatever they can.
And anything's fair game for sure.
Yeah.
Paul, on this last slide that we have here, I'm not really surprised by the price points and the green dots in the certain areas. This just seems normal. I mean, it's crazy in the Louisiana area. Like it just dropped drastically. Sounds like short saleville over there.
Yep.
Any thoughts on this?
This falls into that insurance and property tax thing. And Louisiana is really, they're taking a run on quite a few different things here. That's why where I'm investing in Louisiana is more north, away from the coast, away from that, where you don't have to worry about the flood insurance and some of those other things. But yeah, they are getting hit. The homeowners insurance is ridiculously expensive in that market right now. Again, and that is not a high income earning area in that market. So it's getting hit. There's a lot of these dots you're seeing there, these reds, these oranges in here. And there's, of course, that dot in Cape Coral that we talked about, right? That one little dot in Cape Coral. And then Jacksonville, I guess, has got a dot there. There are these markets where you have that. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, that's either Daytona or
Daytona,
maybe.
Yeah, it's a little south of Jacksonville, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that just when you said that, I just noticed it. But I can see that is also the Panhandle too, like the left side.
Yeah.
Pensacola area. Very interesting.
A lot of hurricanes come in, right? Then in that area. And that's what they're really worried about, I think. And that's why the insurance has gone so much. And again, when you get into the Panhandle, you're not talking about a high income earning area of people, right? It's not super expensive properties out there. Not too many that aren't on the coast, right?
Right. I'm also surprised to see, I think that's Huntsville, Alabama. I'm surprised to see the prices drop there because that was another hot market for a while where everybody was going to Alabama.
Birmingham and Huntsville really blew up, and now they're retreating. We have one in, I think we've done a couple in Alabama recently, but more the smaller tertiary towns out there that still have demand. They're more rural and, again, don't have the crazy insurance or tax costs there.
Really cool stats. I mean, it's just like, wow, this is what's going on, right? Like there's nothing like diving in on the numbers and the actual stats there. So really, really cool to see that. And I appreciate you sharing that with us, Paul, because those kinds of things can really help people understand where the market's at, what's going on. And for somebody like you already know what's going to happen if these numbers change. Like you just went through a whole scenario of, well, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. So when you've gone through these cycles enough, absolutely love it. And, I think people will get value from this. Teresa's been watching. She said, thanks for the golden nugget about the realtors. She said, I've heard a lot of people say that they're moving because they're done and fed up with the cold weather.
Mm-hmm. A lot of that.
Yeah. A lot of that. And she said, hot tip for anyone that has the time and wants to test this. I recently spoke to a gentleman that got his real estate taxes cut in half just by going to the county tax office and complaining every day until they adjusted them. That's a good one.
I recommend that. Look, I'll tell you, back when I was in college, back in 96, 97, I had to get some financial aid. I mean, I was paying my own way through school. And I'm trying to make sure I get my bill paid for the next term. I went to my, whoever my advisor was, every day. I showed up and walked half a mile every single day to her office. She's like, I need to make sure this gets done. I irritated her so much. She took care of it and got it all done for me. So squeaky wheel gets greased sometimes, right? You need to do what you got to do. So I'm all for people doing that with trying to go to the assessor, trying to go to the office to get it reduced. If not, hire an attorney to try to help you get that reduced. There's ways to do it for sure. Homestead, for sure. Homestead's the first one where they lock you in so you can't have these huge increases.
Hey, you know what? Everybody's seeing it on the ground. So any great tips for people out there, it'll help them in their business. So if you've seen it, go for it. And thank you, as always, Teresa, for watching. That's what's so great about live, Paul. Interactive. Everybody's going to interact on this. Paul, towards the end of my show, do these signature questions, right? Something we didn't go over, and it really helps us understand a lot of your processes or any advice you have for people. So, a lot of investors, whether new or seasoned, are always looking to sharpen their tool belt, get their skills together, whether it's on the investing side, software side. What would you say is the most important skill a real estate investor has to have right now?
Know how to comp. That is number one. You've got to be very good at comping and then anticipating which markets to go to, which ones to avoid. Like we were quick to avoid Illinois before the market really shifted. And that was the best thing we did because a lot of money would have been lost there. So trying to stay one step ahead, you want to be able to comp properties properly and then follow things. Like if you want to find out where people are moving from and where they're going to, go to the U-Haul website. You can track their where the trucks go. I'm sure Ryder and these other ones have the same thing too. So try to stay a little bit ahead of the curve. I did that because I burned so bad in 2008 that I need to make sure that didn't happen again. And with people migrating so much, you just got to be careful with that. So definitely try to stay one step ahead, but be good on your comps and reduce your after repair value that you're willing to bid on a property.
Yeah, I've heard that was some advice in the land community. There's John Duong's High Value Land Group. There were some people talking about how you really have to know how to comp these properties because you can start ruining a market if you don't, because it's going to get everybody all crazy about overpriced, over leveraged. It's something that people have to pay attention to. So I like what you're talking about with comping.
Yeah,
in your line of business, right? You're not just real estate investor, you're business owner, entrepreneur. You're doing things at a high volume, you're managing your team, you're getting everybody together. How do you stay organized and prioritize things in your business?
Since I brought my wife on as a bookkeeper, she helps me do that a bit. So she reminds me of what I need to keep my focus on, which is good. I need that because look, as an entrepreneur, and I got ADD. She'll tell you I got ADD. Shiny objects. We're going towards these things. I need to keep my focus on certain things. I had to do that today. Keep my focus on certain things I was working on. Right. So it is super important to do that and organize yourself. Always have your daily checklist of what you need to get and your priorities. Right. So you make your priority your top 3, your top 5. Then the other ones. Okay, if I didn't accomplish this, I kick this the next day and then just make that my next top priority. And just keep shuffling along. It's really what you have to do. I shuffle mine every single day. Sometimes you got to put out fires that come, they happen, unfortunately, with things, and you got to take care of stuff, but try not to let it get pushed into the next day if you can help it.
Yeah. And it's so important to find your points of productivity, right? Something that I've even focused on is, it's easy to say, no, we'll just do it later. But then something happens later that you wish you would have taken care of it earlier. Mm-hmm. So like you said, you have to have all these things in place because you got to be able to address it so you can move on to the next day. Paul, one thing that I think all of us are always looking for is the next really good read. In terms of growing our knowledge on entrepreneurship, real estate, you name it. Any good books out there in business or real estate that you've read recently that you say, hey, this is really good, you got to go there?
I think it was Alex Hormozy's, what is it, $1 million, I'm trying to remember the name of the title, $1 million sales pitch or something. It might not be $1 million. It's whatever he used on it, but it's Alex Hormozy. That's a great one. And it's one I've listened to a couple of times. I got to listen to that one again. It's your sales pitch, what you're trying to sell and how you're doing things. And it's really, really good. And he brings up stuff I never even thought of.
Yeah.
I remember the name of that is a good one. There's a few that I have sitting there for me to go read, and I just haven't gotten to them yet. I'm trying to produce so much content. Your time is so limited.
Totally.
But it's always good. You need to keep reading. And when I can't read, I'll go on YouTube and learn about stuff as well. Right. Fall asleep. My earbuds are in. I wake up in the middle of the night. My earbuds are still in. Sure, we're all like that.
Yeah, exactly. You just got to keep learning whatever channels or mediums that you focus on. It's always about staying educated in your industry and don't stop learning. Never stop learning.
Okay.
Paul, Had so much fun with you on the show. Could have picked a better time for you and I to do this, to go over the market, go over the stats, go over everything, and just to really sit down with you and see what you get into, what you've been focused on. And it's so exciting to see that. And I got to say, thank you for taking the time out of your night to come on the show, share this Nuggets experience for everybody out there. Paul, as I do at the end of my show, I do a segment called Final Words, Final Thoughts. Anything that you really want to leave the audience with a lasting last piece of advice. So as I do, Final Words, Final Thoughts, Paul Lizell.
Okay, here's some of the best piece of advice I can give you moving forward, knowing how the market's shifting and what's going on. If you're having trouble and you're buying in a big market, let's say you're in Miami or you're in Jacksonville or in Atlanta, if you want to really start to excel, move about an hour, even 2 hours outside of those big markets, secondary and tertiary markets. That's our bread and butter. We have no competition there. And reduce your maximum allowable offer, your ARV, what you're coming up with, to 65% minus the repairs. I've gone to 65% just as a buffer. Yeah, I don't anticipate the market falling, but it gives you that oops factor. Even if you're rehabbing, it just gives you a little more margin. And when you sell the property, you got a little more profit. And if nothing bad happened, it's great for you. But you're going to get these better margin deals in these secondary and tertiary markets, way less competition. You're going to see your numbers, your KPIs go way up for those people doing direct mail, texting, cold calling, and all that kind of stuff. We just buy off online auctions, but we still do way better in those secondary and tertiary markets because our competition is very limited there. Our competition is buying into big markets. So that's what I would recommend. Live there. COVID pushed a lot of people there. We were there before, so we were kind of ahead of the curve by accident. It happened there, but those are, it's probably the best golden nugget I could possibly give you.
I think it's a great golden nugget. I believe in it. I totally believe in it. You can't just focus in one market. You have to be able to expand outside of it. Absolutely. Where nobody's going. Go where there's less competition, right?
Yes.
Just people are afraid to go do that, but you gotta in a saturated market, in a market that's stagnant, you gotta focus on that. So love it. We're gonna leave it right there. Love that advice, Paul. So fun. And by the way, I didn't ask you this question. Favorite dessert at Burns Steakhouse?
Ooh, shoot, that we had so many good ones there. There was the one with caramel on it, and I'm trying to remember what it might be, chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream with caramel. Oh wait, there's one with the coffee on it, espresso on it. What was that one called? I'm trying to remember what that one was. That's my favorite, with the espresso on it.
I love it. Yeah, between me, Jerry, and Nick, it's the macadamia nut fudge hot sundae.
Oh, that's always a good one.
Good one.
They have so many good ones there. That's an experience. That's an event. For those who don't know about the Burns Steakhouse, you're giving up your night. It's a 3-hour experience.
You're going. It's gonna be a night, and it's always fun with you guys. So such a fun time.
It's a great time.
Paul, thank you so much again for coming on, man. What a blast. Glad we got to do this. And again, there's a lot of stuff in this episode that people can really unpack and get value from. So thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. Hopefully your audience got a lot out of it. And if they want to reach out to me, they can feel free to do that.
You got it. We got all the information for Paul on the channel. We've been cycling it through his YouTube channel, how to get in touch with Paul, find him on Instagram, get in touch with him. Got anything you want to bring? You got him right there. Paul, thank you so much. I will see you soon, my friend. If not, I will see you at Family in September.
You got it. See you then.
All right, man. You have a great night.
You too, Al. Take care.
All right, everybody. You heard it from the man himself, Paul Lizell, really breaking down price points, inventory, foreclosure statistics, how to capitalize in markets where there's rising insurance, and really going through the stats on where the foreclosure market's at right now and avoiding HOAs. I mean, that's another golden nugget for people that are either jumping into the game or seeing more of these opportunities. There's so many things to unpack from this episode. Don't miss it because Paul really dived in on the stats with the foreclosures. If you love this content, Find us all over the place on social media. Scan that QR code right there. You'll find us on everything, all social media. And of course, we always love the interaction. We always love the fans and followers. Keep on. We got another one rolling. We'll be back next Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Another hot land episode, because land is really hot right now. We got to keep it rolling. So we'll see you all next week with DeAndre and Jeff Altador. It's going to be a blast. See you all next Wednesday, everybody. Have a great night. Take care.